When people hear this place name, the city of Bath in the United Kingdom, they first think of the Romans and the bathhouses that they built. Not surprisingly, because it was the Romans who capitalized on Bath's natural thermal hot springs, elevating hot water bathing to a fine art. An early settlement on the site of this city dates back to 8,000 years BC, and although Bath was founded by the Celts, the bathhouses were built by the Romans. It is located in southwest England in the county of Somerset. The town of Bath was named by the pre-Roman Celts Aqua Sulis in honour of their goddess Sulis, and it means the waters of Sulis, attributing the healing characteristic of the waters to the goddess's powers. The Romans equated the goddess Sulis with their own goddess Minerva, and so she was known to them as Sulis Minerva. Ever since then, the steaming water that flows from the earth's core has played a key role in the history of this city. The hot spring waters were as revered as sacred by the Romans as they had been to the Celts, and they adopted the Celts' belief in Sulis. After the Roman conquest in 60 AD, they kept the name Aquae Sulis, and construction of this spa town of grand temples and bathing complexes began. To the Romans, as to the Celts, this remarkable phenomenon of healing could only be the work of the gods. The baths became centres for recreational and social activities in Roman times. Libraries, lecture halls, gymnasia and formal gardens became part of these bath complexes. Their design reflects a far more complex ritual than simple immersion or sweating procedures. In addition, the Romans used the hot thermal waters to help relieve their suffering from rheumatism, arthritis, and overindulgence in food and drink. Before long, its stunning temple and luxurious baths attracted travellers from throughout the Roman world, making it the place to bathe. Today, well over 1 million litres of steaming spring water at 46 degrees Celsius flow into the pool every day, and tourists flock to Bath by the millions to see this fine example of Roman British architecture. But this great healing shrine of Aquae Sulis was not to last forever. After 409 AD, when the Britons expelled their Roman masters from their cities, the Roman baths silted up, the complexes deteriorated, gradually fell into disrepair, and were eventually lost. The poem The Ruin, written in the 8th century by an unknown author and found in Exeter in southwest England, was probably written about this spa town of Bath as it fell into ruin. Wondrous is this foundation, the fates have broken and shattered this city, the work of giants crumbles. The roofs are ruined, the towers toppled, the earth's grasp holds the builders rotten and forgotten in the hard grip of the ground, until 100 generations of men are gone. This wall, rust-stained and covered with moss, has seen one kingdom after another, stood in the storm steep and tall, then tumbled. So now these courts are empty, and the rich vaults of the vermilion roofs shed their tiles. The ruins toppled to the ground, broken into rubble, where once many a man, glad-minded, gold-bright, bedecked in splendour, proud, full of wine, shone in his war gear, gazed on treasure, on silver, on sparkling gems, on wealth, on possessions, on the precious stones, on this bright capital of a broad kingdom. Stone buildings stood, the wide flowing stream threw off its heat. A wall held it all in its bright bosom, where the baths were, hot in its core, a great convenience. they let them gush forth, the hot streams over the great stones under the ground, until the circular pools, hot, 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 were no longer where the baths were. Hot water bathing, never fashionable in England after the departure of the Romans, became the thing to do again when the alleged healing powers of the mineral-rich waters of Bath began to be talked about more in the mid-18th century. Thatched roof cottages disappeared, soon replaced with magnificent Georgian architecture, stone crafted from the soft, easily carved Bath stone that can be sawn or squared up, unlike slate and other rocks. Classical, sashed-windowed homes lined the streets, and elegant rooms like the Pump Room became the fashionably chic places to be. In season, of course. Today, the Great Bath is 2 meters below the present city level, and the ancient restored baths and temple offer but a glimpse of Roman Britain with its clever architecture and engineering. Uncovered is its elaborate hypocaust or underfloor heating system that serviced a series of rooms, swimming pools, hot sweat rooms and cold rooms. Amongst the most remarkable and revealing artefacts recovered from the baths are the written vows, dedications or curses inscribed on lead tablets that suggest that Minerva was perceived to be not just a nourishing and life-giving goddess, but also an agent to grant curses requested by her devoted followers. Some tablets appealed to Sulis for health and wealth, while others inscribed curses. These tablets were placed in the water to await results, and those who knew of the curse being placed on them would imbue a magic of their own to the hot springs with backwards writing that was thought to have extra potency. And at its centre, in its own hall, is the great bath lined with 14 massive sheets of lead and is surrounded by the statues of the gods. In 1727, the gilt-bronze head of Sulis Minerva, the deity worshipped long ago, was found in Stall Street, in front of the Roman Plaza, and it now hangs inside the excavated baths. All artifacts, including coins, have been removed from the Roman baths. The waters are now considered unsafe for bathing, even though the green mineral waters entice one to at least dip one's fingers to gingerly taste the essence of it. So although the taking of waters, a drinking of the earth, limestone-filtered mineral water, is now banned, more than 2,000 years ago, Celts and Romans revelled in it. Some Elizabethans in the 16th century carefully drank it, and fashionable 18th and 19th century believers sought out the mineral waters for medicinal relief. It had been thought that the waters could relieve illnesses and discomforts such as rheumatic and urinary diseases, and it became trendy for the very well-heeled of society to bathe in or drink the mineral waters heavy with calcium, magnesium, potassium, iron, lead and strontium, and which is also slightly radioactive, in hopes of easing their internal ailments. After the Romans left, and for over 1,000 years, the city passed from hand to hand, falling into disrepair and then built again and again. In 1348, Bath had been overcome with loss of population due to the plague, and then again on 4 occasions in the 17th century. It's no wonder that they clung to the belief that by taking the waters they could ward off the disease, for what else did they have to believe in? In the year 1500, the Bishop of Bath and Wells saw to its restoration. Then the priory was dissolved in Bath when King Henry VIII passed the Dissolution of Monasteries Act, and Bath was neglected once again. During Queen Elizabeth I's reign, the town of Bath became a little more popular again. the baths were improved and the waters were taken once again. In 1668, Thomas Guidot, a chemist and medical student, fascinated with the waters, moved to the town. He said, "It cannot be clean to go so many bodies together in the same water." And he also wrote 2 articles, a discourse of Bath and the waters there, and the other was Some Inquiries into the Nature of the Water of Bath. As a result, there was a huge influx of visitors to the town. Major rebuilding projects and improvements began. A mineral water hospital opened its doors to the public in 1742, with treatments administered at no charge for the seriously ill patients. Then the population grew, and by 1790, Bath boasted of 18 physicians, 13 surgeons, and 25 apothecaries. By 1801, the town had grown to over 40,000 people, making it one of the largest towns in all of England. Based on all the evidence, it appears to be quite clear that Bath's most precious commodity, the mineral spring water, does contain economic healing properties, whether you drink it or not. Although the Roman baths in the heart of the city are the focal point to anyone visiting Bath, the city stretches out on both sides of the River Avon with much to see. Historically, it has been home to Romans, Georgians, Edwardians and Victorians. It has 89,000 residents today, and prestigious crescents and terraces line the streets. One of the most spectacular is the Royal Crescent. It stands high atop a sweeping hillside in a secluded part of Bath, overlooking Victoria Park, built between 1767 and 1774 and designed by John Wood. However, the extent of his input was simply the curved facade with its characteristic columns on a rusticated ground floor. The facade was then sold in lengths, 30 residences in total. Designs were drawn up to meet the buyer's specifications and built by their own architects, some including a length of what appears to be 2 residences in one. Not surprisingly, the Royal Crescent has been home to a number of notable people over the past 230 years. But no less beautiful is the King's Circus, also designed by John Wood, although he never lived to see his plans put into effect, as he died less than 3 months after the first stone was laid. In 1727, afire with a passion to transform his native city, he set to putting his ideas to work. Inspired by the Roman Colosseum architecture, his grand vision was to recreate a classical design with the circus facing inwards. His design embraces the Palladian style of the 16th century and is generally referred to as his masterpiece. The central park rises slightly in its centre. It was once paved with stones with a central water reservoir, but is now just lawn. His son, John Wood Jr., was left to complete his father's design. Viewed from the air, it has the shape of a key. Some think it is perhaps a Masonic symbol. Hidden over the parade wall in the heart of the city is a sunken oasis of green. The beautiful 1-hectare parade gardens is one of the best examples of a Victorian public garden. It overlooks the River Avon with views of Pulteney Bridge and offers a contrast of brightly coloured flowers, shade trees and shrubs. As we walked through the park, I could not help but think of how it would have felt in Victorian times to stroll as I am today through the manicured gardens, to sit in leisure in one of the deck chairs, to listen to the birdsong and to watch the clouds drift past. Spanning the River Avon is Pulteney Bridge. Only 45 metres long and 18 metres wide, it was built in 1774 to link the city of Bath with the Pulteney family's rural estate and the newly built Georgian town of Bathwick on the other side of the Avon. It was named after Francis Pulteney and designed by Robert Adam in the Palladian style of Venetian architecture. With shops across its full span on both sides, it is one of only 4 bridges in the world with this design. Built of limestone, as is most of Old Bath, the southern facade takes the form of a temple-like central bay with symmetrical wings that connect to 2 flanking, terminating pavilions. Sounds from the River Avon drift up to the street, and the elegant shops that line both sides of the bridge give it an air of tranquility in this busy tourist town. The famous Sally Lunn Bun House, built in 1482 with the lowest floor level dating to around 1150, is the oldest house in Bath. Sally Lunn's house stands on what was once the southern range of the Bath Abbey complex, destroyed in 1137 when a fire ran through the whole city. In 1985, extensive archaeological digs produced items dating back through Bath's history to Roman times. Along with pieces of high-quality Samian pottery, floor mosaics, painted plaster from the walls, roof tiles, a box flue, and the underfloor heating system were found. But most interesting was the discovery of the painted rim of a mortarium, a mortar used with a pestle designed for extracting flavours from aromatic plants. This find leaves no doubt there was a Roman building on this site in which food was prepared and eaten. It may have even been a Roman inn for travellers, since the goddess Sulis Minerva attracted visitors from all over northwest Europe. Even after the Romans left, the town was not abandoned. Rather, it continued to grow, although in a dilapidated condition. And by the 7th century, the first Christian structure had been established upon the ruins of the Roman temple. For the next 1200 years, a succession of churches rose and fell upon the hallowed ground, with a currently standing abbey having been constructed between 1499 and the mid-17th century. In the year 1090, the episcopal diocese was relocated from the comparatively small settlement of Wells in Somerset to the then walled city of Bath, thereby elevating the status of the abbey to a cathedral. Then, with the building half finished, the cathedral in 1137 was devastated by fire. When Oliver King, Bishop of Bath and Wells from 1495 to 1503, visited Bath in 1499, he was shocked to find that this famous church was in ruins. The story has it that on a visit to Bath, King had a dream in which he saw the heavenly host on high, with angels ascending and descending by ladder upon the cathedral. In October 1500, Bishop King wrote to the Prior of Bath to explain that a large amount of the priory income would be dedicated to rebuilding the cathedral. Masons were commissioned, and Thomas Lynn was appointed to supervise work. Oliver King was the driving force in tearing down the decaying Norman cathedral and replacing it with the columns of Bath's honey gold stone and magnificent stained glass windows. The present-day Bath Abbey was founded. Then Bath Abbey saw a decline again, for in January 1539 it was sold to Humphrey Collis, who had the church stripped of lead, iron and glass and left it to decay. It wasn't until 1574 that Queen Elizabeth I promoted the restoration of the church. During the 1820s and 1830s, buildings, including houses, shops and taverns, were removed from the perimeter of the church, and another major restoration project began, headed by Sir George Gilbert Scott in 1860. And although Bath Abbey has never been faced with such devastation again, it still undergoes constant, year-round restoration work. Bath offers a little bit of something for everyone and strives to meet the needs of every shopper, be they resident or tourist. The famous indoor market, Green Park Station, in the Victorian building with a curved glass roof, draws maximum crowds on a Sunday. There are shops that sell sweets to satisfy the most finicky of taste buds. And of course, there are funky shops for the shopper who has everything. And last but not least, there are dozens of pubs and restaurants to get a pie and a pint, or more elaborate fare. Then one can always return to the square in front of the baths where the crowds congregate to join bus tours. Buskers entertain here, and where the gilt bronze head of the goddess Sulis Minerva was found. This bronze head is one of the best known objects from Roman Britain, and is certainly the statue of this deity which would have stood within her temple beside the sacred spring. It was discovered here in 1727. Since the head is slightly larger than life-size, it suggests that the original statue, of golden brilliance with its 6 layers of gilding, was an imposing sight. The first 2 layers were of fire gilding, whilst the 4 outer layers had been applied as gold leaf. Hidden in the hairline are several small holes which once held rivets that fixed her tall Corinthian helmet to her head. Sulis's name has proved complex to interpret, with many possible overlapping meanings relating to the reconstructed Proto-Celtic word Silin, which means she who is gazed upon. The name is composed of Su, meaning good, and Lihant, referring to a provider of beneficial or healing waters. Sulis's name may also be related to a Proto-Celtic word meaning sun, or from the Old Irish Suil, meaning eye. This sun association may be why Aqua Sulis was also associated with the radiating-haired Medusa-like image of a Celtic solar deity. This extraordinarily interesting city, Bath, the Roman city of Aquae Sulis, was a sacred place where it was believed that mortals could communicate with deities of the underworld by seeking the assistance of the goddess Sulis Minerva.